Greetings, Internet! Welcome to the Winter Wonderland that is Comic Watchers Show, episode number 157. We're your hosts, Matt and Mike. How the heck are you this week, Mike Akins?
Good, man. Good. Work's been a little weird and tiring, but good otherwise.
Well, you know, I feel you. You work in that university life, so...
The crazy university life, you know?
Right. Well, I don't know about you, but I think at least a third of the country is getting the shit kicked out of it via blizzard right now. So
Yes.
I know Oklahoma is right now, and it's stretching clear up to Toronto. That's a hell of a storm. There's a lot of folks out there that could perhaps use a little distraction while they're stuck indoors. So let's do our level best this week to entertain them. What say you?
The show.
Cool. So this is part 3 of our
Is it 3 already?
Spidey's 60th anniversary hoedown. And we're going to talk about symbiotes. But first, we really wanted to dip in and talk about this situation with Art Spiegelman's mouse being banned by the McMinn County School Board in Tennessee. I'll just let me just before I even get into this, Mike, I just want to throw out there, and I think you'll agree with me that history shows that people who ban books never come out on top and on the right side of history. So let's just start there. This whole thing started last week. So this McMinn County School Board, all 10 members of it, voted unanimously to remove Mouse, A Survivor's Tale, from the required reading for the 8th grade class. Now, if you're not familiar with Mouse, this is a comic that came out. Book 1 came out in 1986. Book 2 came out in 1992. It received in 1992 a special commendation Pulitzer Prize. It tells the story of Art Spiegelman's father's survival during World War II in a concentration camp. And it does it in a very unique way in that it portrays Jews as mice and Nazis as cats, and Americans as dogs, Poles as pigs, etc. It does that, and it also isn't just telling his story, but it's also telling the story of how Spiegelman's father's experiences in the concentration camp affected their relationship up into the modern times. Now Spiegelman is 73 years old now, and his father has long since passed away. He passed away almost 40 years ago, in fact. But this is powerful literature. This is the type of thing that if you go into a bookstore, you don't find this with the comics. You find it in the history section. It's the most important comic ever made, period. There's no two ways about it. So the McMinn County, Tennessee's school board's objection was a few quote-unquote cuss words and depictions of nudity, i.e. illustrated animal nudity. And of course, the offending phraseology in this case was the word bitch and the phrase goddamn.
Right.
And this was just... this was the reason that these morons decided to ban the book. Now, the immediate reaction is, or has been like, oh, this school board's a bunch of Nazis.
Right.
And I mean, I can understand why people would want to jump to that conclusion. The answer, Mike, is a lot dumber than that, though. Mother Jones got their hands on the meeting notes.
Yeah.
And have you read this, Mike?
I haven't meet. I know they're out there, but I haven't seen them. But
Yeah, you can go to Mother Jones and check it out.
I think you're going to go into there. It's some pretty hysterical stuff.
It's not even that it's hysterical, Mike. It's just stupid. Like, here, I'm going to throw a link up to the
Oh, okay.
to the story that I'm looking off of. But so there's, let's see, one member of the school board says there's some rough, objectionable language in the book, and this person's immediate fix was to redact the 8 curse words and the picture of the woman that was being objected to. Another board member, that wasn't good enough, so another board member named Tony Allman says, we don't need to enable or somewhat promote this stuff. It shows people hanging. It shows them killing kids. Why does the educational system promote this kind of stuff? It's not wise or healthy. And like the members of the school faculty tried to fight back, and and they're just like, there's nothing pretty about the Holocaust. And for me, this is a great way to depict a horrific time in history. And for this whole thing boils down to these 10 morons on this school board think that somehow these 8th grade kids have never heard these words before and are going to be scarred for life if they see a cartoon rodent's vagina while it's hanging. And it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, no, these are great. I have it right here. I pulled it up. Like, this is some good stuff.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, and the funny thing is, you know, this kind of thing isn't new. I mean, we heard it as kids with video games, right? Video games are all the violence, right? And, you know, you can't play video games, you can't listen to, you know, heavy metal and all that stuff. But so this is nothing new. The attack from this corner of the world, it's been doing it since the dawn of time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But I mean, and in no way for folks that are going to watch this, whatever, we're not saying that, you know, parents can't have a voice in what their kids are learning, because they absolutely should. But at the same time, if this is really one of those, well, let the parents decide, well, why are we banning the book and not even giving the parents the decision to look at this book, read the book, and then decide for themselves if their kid is mature enough to read said book?
Well, and that's just it. Like, the school board wasn't even allowing the parents that. So they were just like, it says a bad word.
Now, meanwhile, you know, the 8th grade kid is on TikTok showing his ass. But yeah, let's ban the book.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, it's just like these idiots just keep going.
Yeah.
Like, here's another quote from a different school board member named Jonathan Pierce. You can take the module and rewrite it and make it do the same thing. The wording in this book is in direct conflict with some of our policies. If I said on the school bus that I was going to kill you, we would be bringing disciplinary action against that child. And then another hold on, it gets better. Another school board member jumps in, says, my bigger concern is that this is probably the tip of the iceberg of what's out there, suggesting that the entire curriculum needed much more vetting to catch its mouse-like problems. And it's just like this shit just keeps going. And Mike, there's been a way, you were good at pointing this out, there's been a wave of recent book bannings. I mean, Toni Morrison's book Beloved got banned somewhere.
I think it was in Texas.
Big surprise there. Nick allowed that to happen.
Stay valiant, Nick.
You valiantly failed.
Yeah, Texas is valiantly failing right now. No, there was the story that I was reading, and it's actually from my state too. I'm in Virginia, for folks that don't know, where Beloved was banned, but when they were banning these books, they spoke about Lolita being a piece of like American literature. It's written by a dude, by the way, and it deals with pedophilia. So let's give the 8th graders Lolita, but we can't give them a book about Beloved,
which
you can't give a mouse. But
I can't stress enough. Lolita is about a grown man, quote unquote, falling in love with a 13-year-old girl and fucking her.
Right. And I correct
Um,
me if I'm wrong, but I think like it was her uncle. Like I think it's like
yeah, it's something. It's like the story's not screwed up enough,
yeah,
but
fucking range, man.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So this is probably my favorite quote from a school board member. His name is Mike Cochran. And he says, I went to school here 13 years. I never had a book with a naked picture in it. Never had one with foul language. So this idea that we have to have this kind of material in the class in order to teach history, I don't buy it. He growls that the book obliquely refers to Spiegelman's father losing his virginity and explicitly depicts the suicide of Spiegelman's mother. Goes on to say, a lot of the cussing had to do with the son cussing out his father. So I don't really know how this teaches our kids any kind of ethical stuff. We don't need this stuff to teach kids history. We don't need all the nakedness and the other stuff. And then, hold on, it gets so much better. To make his point, he raised a poem that he claimed was being taught in 7th grade and out loud. And it I won't read the whole thing, but it says, I'm just wild about Harry, and Harry is wild about me. The heavenly bliss of his kisses fill me with ecstasy. And this is a song that was written by somebody named Eubie Blake in 1921, and Judy Garland had a hit with it in 1939, and Harry S. Truman adopted it for his campaign theme song in 1948.
There we go.
So this 100-year-old song was this is the caliber of people we're dealing with, Mike. These are the caliber of people that are making decisions for children in America trying to get an education, and an important education at that, because it's about the freaking Holocaust.
Whoa, man.
There is no excuse.
Well, you also got to remember
whatsoever to not teach children about the Holocaust. The minute you start down that hill, like of omitting uncomfortable bits of history, and kids don't learn about this stuff, then that's when you forget, and eventually history repeats.
Right. Well, and the thing is what they're trying to do, and I almost get the gist of it, because we remember as kids when you're first doing something and you're kind of uncomfortable and you kind of, you may have like this weird, take on things, right? But also at the same time, if you're uncomfortable with something, you have to ask why you're uncomfortable and kind of almost take a step back and look at it and ask those.
It's a self-challenge.
Yeah.
And we have to be able, Mike, be able to teach these kids, any kid, right? How to think critically about things.
Right.
If we're going through and complete daffily myopic is how Spiegelman said it. Yes. If we're going through and we're teaching kids that the point of mouse and why they can't read it is the boobies or the bad words, then you're teaching them to focus on the wrong thing. And that sort of nonsense thinking, Mike, is exactly what perpetuates year after year, decade after decade, this pearl clutching amongst a certain segment of conservatism that wants to shield everybody from everything, right? And they always want a scapegoat. And I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, this is I immediately am thinking of the comic book scare in the 50s.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that, and then
or rock and roll also in the 50s, right?
Well, that was the height of
that Elvis Presley suggestively move his hips.
Oh no.
Oh no. And 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 so on and so forth. Horror movies in the 80s. The Satanic Panic.
Oh, the Satanic Panic. I mean, I was getting ready to even bring up, we're almost seeing like modern McCarthyism with this.
It is.
My governor opened up a snitch line for teachers So if you don't like what they're teaching, and little Billy says, "Mama, why did we do this? Hundreds and thousands of years ago." Oh my God, we didn't do that. And the problem is when you say we know everyone alive now. We get that part, and that's not the point, kids. What is the point is knowing where we've been and where we need to go so we don't go back to where we've been. And I know it's uncomfortable, and I know you may not like it, but guess what? It flipping happened. You got to talk about it. You got to have that dialogue. And I wholeheartedly believe you find out the true nature of someone's soul when you take out the low-hanging fruit of talking points and you make it about humanity.
Yes. Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Now, when you're not comfortable about talking about humanity, that's when you need to look inside yourself and ask why you're not comfortable about you talking.
Yeah, Mike, that's pretty profound, actually. I'll just add too that this whole scapegoating shares an ugly cousin with racial scapegoating.
Sure.
And the Klan famously in the 1870s in the Reconstruction era, sparked fears of black men. Black men are going to run around and rape white women, and this is definitely a cousin of that. And the whitewashing of history, which is akin to banning books about important things like the Holocaust. It absolutely happens. And my state, Oklahoma, gets 95% of things wrong, but I am really, really, really proud of the fact that in recent years, the Tulsa Race Massacre has become called what it was, which is a massacre instead of a race riot, which has a completely different connotation. But it's openly in schools. When I was in, just was not talked about. Period. It wasn't taught. And that's just true of my entire generation in Oklahoma. Like, I found out about the Tulsa Race Massacre in the night from a friend. And who'd also grown up in Oklahoma, and he was just like, "Yeah, you never heard about it?" No, that I wasn't taught that in school. And sure enough, and recent years have seen very, very concerted efforts to really redress that wrong and to educate the public. And coming back around, because that was a lengthy segue, there's always going to be a segment of society that wants to sweep things under the rug. Whether it's, like you said, a matter of discomfort, whether it is a matter of whether it's a matter of race, of something in the name of quote unquote protecting kids, which in their own silly and misguided way is what this school board unanimously, I can't get over that, voted to do. They think and of course I can't see into their hearts in truth, but based upon these minutes from this meeting, they seem to honestly believe that they're acting in these kids' best interest. They could not be more wrong, but they sincerely believe that they are in the right. And people that are in the wrong but believe they are in the right, it's very dangerous because, one, they lack the ability to self-reflect, they lack critical thinking skills, and they lack the ability to look at things from other people's perspective. And
the funny thing is when I was reading the article about the stuff that they're doing up north, be it like Manassas and Richmond and all that stuff, and I can't remember the school board where this is from, but one of the members of the school board was talking about, well, if you ban these books, like, what would you replace them with? And she said the Bible, and which is fine, to each his own, as long as if you want to put other religious texts in there.
Yes, let's also make sure we put the Quran.
Right.
and the Torah.
Right.
And anything else the Satanic Bible, because why not? Oh,
Well,
Satanic Church,
and,
they're so rad. But that's a different conversation.
yeah,
um
talk about
no,
Tom
you're
Moran.
absolutely right. If you're gonna replace it with the Bible, and we'll just take that tack, you better be teaching. If you're going to be using my tax dollars to pay for it in our separation of church and state country, supposedly,
Yeah.
then you better be teaching about these other religions.
Yeah. Do you think that if they put the Bible in public schools, they'll like ban like Leviticus and stuff where it talks about incest within the family?
Oh goodness, no. As
I
a
was
matter of fact, no, no.
I don't know if you
That
want to take that turned on.
So whoever this is at Architectural Foam Panels and
That's
Columns,
great.
who I'm just absolutely loving that we're getting comments from Architectural Foam Panels and Columns, my hat is off to you, says, wow, where in the Bible do we find an historical account of the Holocaust? LOL. That's pretty clever. And it makes a point. Mike, the great thing about, let me just rephrase that. Not the great thing, but the silver lining of this situation is
Yeah.
there has been such a awesome and swiftly organized counter movement around the country of organizations, comic stores that are willing to ship for free copies of Mouse to students in that school district that want to read it.
Yeah.
And I mean, just like movements like that. And oh, that's just so great. That's such a positive thing to see.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's like, once again, we go back to that humanity thing, and it's not about, if you have a problem with it, we get it. Fine. If naked fictional mice is where you draw the line in impurity in your life, that's fine. But once again, you're
It's not my line.
right. Mine's a little higher. But I'm okay with naked mole rats and stuff like that. But the thing is, like, once again, they're camouflaging this like they give two shits about the parents' parental choice. Once again, if my kid were to bring home a copy of Lolita, the Bible, and Max, I'm gonna go. Let's hold off on the Bible and Lolita. We can have a little till we can get the bigger words down. But Mouse would definitely be something that would stick around the house. And I just think that.
Everybody should read Mouse. It should be required reading.
Not say that. Yeah, read Mouse. Let me not get into
Like,
that tape. Yeah, read Mouse.
There are certain books
Yeah.
that just should be taught. 1984 is one of them. Oh,
Animal Farm.
Yeah, Animal Farm. Lord of the Flies.
Well, was not supposed to be writing life manuals, but apparently.
Mouse.
Yeah.
And a few more, I'm sure, that are just going to escape me for the time being. But
The Dark Knight.
Say again.
The Dark Knight.
No.
No Dark Knight.
No.
No. Okay.
You talking about Dark Knight Returns?
Yeah.
No. Maybe for comics fans, but I'm talking about just like the general public, things people should read.
Well, okay. Killing Joke then.
Well, let's think outside of the comics box.
Lolita.
Well,
have we talked about?
No, not Lolita. Catcher in the Rye, if you want to turn someone into a sociopath.
Yeah. Catcher in the Rye is good.
Brave New World, definitely. Good call out there.
A people's history of the.
Oh yes, Howard Zinn. Gotta have that. Gotta have that one.
Slaughterhouse 5. That's huge.
Yes.
Gotta have Slaughterhouse 5 in there.
Gotta have Slaughterhouse. Gotta have basically 60 to 70% of Vonnegut's output.
I was about to say, yeah.
So I mean, Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Going back to Orwell.
What else?
Probably some Dickens in there. Tale of Two Cities. Something of that effect. Mark Twain, of course.
Yeah. I would say It is a little deep, but I would say Letters from Death Row by Mumia Abu-Jamal. That's
I'm
really
not familiar with that one, actually.
That deals with the MOVE movement, and he was part of that the bombing in Philadelphia when we bombed a neighborhood in the U.S.
Oh, that! Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
But Letters from Death Row is really, really good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is, like, mouse, anybody that's clutching their pearls over mouse vaginas or whatever, or the word bitch, is so utterly and completely misplaced with their morality that they might as well be speaking a different language and living on a different planet. And if, thank goodness there's this counter movement that immediately, like overnight almost, it seemed, sprung up to get mouse into interested students' hands. Because if we get complacent and allow the force, and I'm getting on my soapbox now, if we allow the forces that want to tamp down ideas and sweep history under the rug for whatever their justification may be, then the 45s of the world are going to keep winning.
Sure. And they're going to win again. They're absolutely going to win again. I mean,
so,
they're absolutely going to win again.
Absolutely. So that, get out there and so, for God's sake, if you could find a copy of Mouse, it's shot up to the #1 spot on New York Times bestseller list, and with good reason. And even places like Amazon have have it on back order.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, our commentator here,
good stuff.
Architectural Foam Panels and Columns. Thank you so much. I'm going to follow them just because.
Yeah,
I don't even know what they do.
And he's right,
following them, Mike.
Yeah, he's absolutely been like.
Spiegelman's been an absolute G about this whole situation. Couldn't have a better ambassador for the comics medium or a more composed spokesman for why difficult material needs to be taught, let alone reconciled with. I don't think I could put that any better. So, Art Spiegelman, brilliant, Mouse, essential. People that want to shut down these types of ideas, ghastly. So let's talk about space goo.
Huh?
Yes. That was the most awkward pivot of all time, Mike. Space goo, i.e. symbiotes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Space Force.
Not Space Force. Space Force is, listen, it's funny. You're a veteran, and I am in my work at a nonprofit. I help veterans, and we've got our slides with our seals of the 5 branches, even the Coast Guard, and on there. I make a joke every time we do an orientation that someday I'm going to have to be forced to add a Space Force seal to it. But no, this is not about Space Force real or imagined, i.e. the Steve Carell show. This is about space goo called Symbiotes or Kleintar, if you prefer. And how they keep coming up, and how that, it's Spidey's 60th anniversary, and this is our 3rd episode in a row that we wanted to tip our hat to Spidey, and in this case, the Man in Black, Venom. Haha, like how I did that. And to just, I think there's some older fans that are probably like, symbiotes, bleh. But we love symbiotes. I mean, we love them because they get milked to death, and something must be good if it's getting milked to death. There must be something there, Mike. Something that we're not getting. So, you are absolutely the guru when it comes to all things symbiote. So, let's see.
Okay. No, yeah, man. We'll see you next time for sure. I like that. Giving us a little
cool dude. do that? I can't. I'm not sure, honestly.
Person.
Person. Thank you, Mike. Checking my
Non-space
pronoun usage. So, Mike, what the heck is the deal with symbiotes? Why is Marvel and Spidey's corner of the world so fascinated with symbiotes?
I think it goes back to possibly Spider-Man having some of the best in comics, you know, or relations, you know, it's 2022. But they're interesting, you know. I mean, when you have the ability to join with someone or something rather, and heightens your senses. You got the super strength. You can make weapons out of your hands. You're pretty much Reed Richards on steroids at this point. And the battle, I always like to think of like the symbiotes, especially with like, you know, like Venom and Carnage and stuff, where you have Eddie Brock and then you have Venom, you know, and therefore for the longest time, really up until Donny Cates took over, you really didn't have a separation. You didn't have like an Eddie Brock and a Venom. You just had a Venom. And so Eddie never really had his kind of his own personality aside from what we knew in the Spider-Man comics.
Right. Doesn't like Spidey.
Right.
Kind of a jerk about it.
Right.
Occasionally says he wants to eat brains.
Right. But and I also think that, you know, for years, Marvel never really knew what to do with the symbiotes, especially when they started spawning, you know, when you know, we got, you know, like, you know, Toxin and Sleeper and Scream and all this other stuff. So what do we do with them? Well, we don't know. Well, they're just going to lie dormant and we'll just do Venom and Carnage because we can put them with Spider-Man. And for how many times and how many just, you know, you get 3 comics here, 4 comics here, you start a series, but there's, you know, there's no advertising. You really don't have a strong creative team. And the stories just really weren't interesting. But I think with the rebirth that with the realistically with Cates' run, and we're going to talk about, I mean, we're going to say Donny Cates' name another 1,000 times throughout this podcast, but when we finally got separation from Eddie and Venom, now it's just a symbiote. And we do know that, you know, the symbiote Venom doesn't mind hopping around. You know, we've seen that, and it's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Eddie finally has his own identity.
Yeah, right? He kind of has to.
Right. At this point, because you kind of got to do some new things, right? And so now we got Carnage, and now, well, what do we do with Carnage now? Well, you know, we have Carnage USA.
Well, let's touch on Carnage, though, before we get cracking with the rest of them, because I think, and, you know, hey, it's Carnage's 30th anniversary this year, and Marvel's definitely going all out. I mean, we got a Carnage Palooza happening with Ram V, of all people, writing a new Carnage series pretty soon, which is weird, and I kind of super hyped for it because Ram V is a very intellectual writer, and Carnage is a very visceral character. Yeah. So, you know, the two of them together is an odd pairing, and I want to see what happens there.
Well, I think. Oh, go ahead. No, I think it's good fit because with Ram's style, he knows how to slow burn it without leaving it burn overnight. You know, he kind of walks you through it, kind of, you know, works on that psychological a little bit, big thing, and then he's going to slow it down a little bit. He's going to speed it up and slow it down. And that approach we haven't seen with Carnage. It's always been brute strength. You know, it's always been
slice and dice, baby.
Yeah, you know, and he's
like, who is Cletus Cassidy as a person other than a giggling psychopath and a poor example of mental health unchecked?
Right. You know, and another cool thing that I'm hoping he'll touch on, maybe he will, maybe he won't, is, you know, Carnage at times is almost vampiric, you know, where he needs, you know, the blood, the life force of other folks to live. You know, all the symbiotes need a host except for one, which is Toxin. But and we've never touched on that, you know. And I think with Ram V, you know, like you said, it's for sure a weird mix. It's like Stephen King writing, you know, an episode of The Big Bang Theory. Like, what can it work? Who knows? But let's see.
Well, I mean, hey, and in Ram's defense, A, he's super crazy talented.
Yeah, he's
But
badass.
B, he seemed like he was going to be an odd fit on Venom,
Right.
and he's killing it on Venom so far,
Right.
along with that.
Absolutely.
So here's where I'm wanting to kind of piece this puzzle together a little bit. So you got Venom, and Venom is here's the dark version of Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, absolutely is.
At least to start with, before all the other crazy things start happening.
Yeah.
At his core, that's what he is. Then Marvel said, well, it's the 90s now, and we got to be more extreme. So what can we do to make a more extreme version of Venom? Okay, well, let's make him a serial killer, and he can make slicey spikes.
Right.
And okay, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the Venom Lethal Protector series. And we start that, and part of like the big, I don't know if it's part of the marketing of it, but one of the big plot points of that series was that the symbiote spawn, was it like 5 other symbiotes at that point?
Yep, the team. Yeah, the team.
The team.
Yeah, the team.
Now,
where that's where we get like Scream and Scream. There's like 5. I know what you're talking about though.
And as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, these characters are all still around, right?
Yes, a majority of them. And the great thing is with Scream, we're getting like with Clay McLeod. Oh my God. Clay Chapman McLeod. Thank you. When he's writing Scream now, he did it for like Planet the Symbiotes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
He did when he took Andy from Scream, and not to jump off, I'm going to go back to it, but we saw like his style where we know Scream needs Andy, obviously, you know, needs
who's Andy?
Host. Andy Benton is the host for Scream.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so you kind of saw like her, like the Scream symbiote kind of almost like befriending Andy, you know, and kind of doing a different take on that. And I was like, wow, that's really dope. And to go back with Cletus, we haven't seen that yet, you know, and yeah, we kind of, it's, you know, Carnage has always been Venom and Spider-Man's, you know, yin and yang, you know, after, you know, when Venom kind of became like the cool anti-hero, that kind of, that kind of greenlit Carnage to, well, wait a second, now we don't really have a manacle character that's just freewheeling, you know, guillotine hands and stuff like that and just chopping the shit out of everybody. And I just think that, you know, the character, even the character Cletus Cassidy is interesting, but I don't think we've had a writer yet really dig into it and really kind of give an identity to who really Cletus is. You know,
I don't think so either, because he's always just presented as the kind of stereotypical early to mid 90s slasher flick serial killer guy, right?
Low hanging fruit at that time.
Do what?
I said it was very low hanging fruit.
Well, it was absolutely. That's how, like in the Batman books, you get Mr. Zsasz, right? Same concept, exact same thing. So I can definitely get behind, like, okay, here's Carnage being the next extreme version of Venom, but then you get to Scream and these other yahoos, and I mean, are they? And I'll just use Scream as my example here. What does Scream do as a character and as a symbiote that Carnage or Venom can't? Like, how is Scream the next iteration? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's kind of a good question. Wow, I don't even know how I would answer that one. I think
you're supposed to.
Damn it, man. No, I think with the difference with, say, like the Life Foundation symbiotes is when they first came about, they were just part of that Lethal Protector story. You know, there was really no plan for him, and they said,
Right. It's like here's a bunch of other symbiotes that aren't Venom or Carnage, for lack of a better term.
right. And then once we got the Andy Benton story with Scream, you know, we kind of started to see a different side of symbiotes. You know, like I said, you know, where they kind of took her in a different direction to where she was almost helping Andy, you know, and so where because you know Andy has her own problems, and it's kind of like, well, we can kind of because I think there's a line in Scream one, that one shot during King in Black where Andy kind of talks about, well, is there a reason to go on type of deal. She's kind of having that rough mental breakdown. And, you know, Scream's like, no, you know, we got to finish this. We got to do this. You know, we're kind of in this together. And that's kind of interesting because there's really, you know, even, you know, Venom when he's with, you know, Eddie, never really that person that, you know, lift him up and you like, wow, I'm getting encouragement from this symbiote that, you know, gives me like, you know, these superpowers, you know, and you're almost like built from hell type deal. And I think that's great. And I think that's kind of what makes symbiotes so interesting, especially now. And I love the fact that hopefully, you know, folks are giving like a second chance to these symbiotes because there's some very interesting stories in there, you know. And
Marvel definitely with the recent Carnage event that Philip Kennedy Johnson wrote the bookend issues for. What was it called? Forgive me. I should know.
Oh God, the Philip that's that wasn't the Red, White, and Blood, was it?
No, it had all of the one shots in between. It was like Extreme Carnage, I think.
Was that Extreme Carnage? I think that.
I think it was. You know, both the bookends issues were Philip Kennedy Johnson, and in between them all was a one shot featuring Scream or Agony or Lasher or Phage or whatever. Yeah. So what's the deal? Like, did you read this? Like, what's the deal with all of these various characters? And also, we got somebody in there named Hybrid. And there's Toxin. Toxin has a fairly interesting story too. We haven't even talked about Toxin yet.
Toxin's pretty cool. I'm kind of excited. I'm excited for the series that's coming out because I want to see if they're going to continue building on what they brought him out to. Because right now there's a teenager that is the host of Toxin, and that plays into. I think we talked about this on Venom when we did the show for Venom #1, where during, I want to say it's Absolute Carnage, and I am going to, let me get my notes here because I can't remember the dude's name. Oh man, I am going, oh my God.
So Toxin also appears to have poisonous fangs.
Yes, he's poisonous, and he's the only symbiote is immune to the Spidey sense. Spider-Man can't.
That's not true.
Which one?
Venom.
He can track Venom through a Spidey sense.
No, he can't. He doesn't start it off because the symbiote knows how, because from when it was bonded to Peter Parker, the symbiote knows how to get around it. That's one of the reasons that Peter Parker never could defeat Venom. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I learned you something.
You did, because for years I have sat on like Toxin and no one has called me on that. I feel less smart now, but
this means I contributed a little. Pardon me. So
back to Toxin. When the what is that? His name, I can't remember the politician's name, but it's kind of almost like they're redoing the Life Foundation, to where they're hunting symbiotes, and so Carnage has taken over the senator's body.
Oh, okay.
When
what you're talking about, and I just can't think of the name.
Oh yeah, I can't remember what his name is. It's killing me. But so when the teenager, when Bren kind of takes it, Toxin is once again kind of like what Scream and Andy are doing. They're almost helping each other. They're almost like a duo. It's not like
Right.
the symbiote is battling the host and the host is battling the symbiote. So it's really cool. And I think Toxin is, I want to say he's probably one of the strongest symbiotes out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would say I would definitely put him up against Carnage. Maybe Venom then Toxin, or Toxin then Venom. You know, could rotate 1 and 2 as the strongest symbiotes out there.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's really cool that they're finally, you know, we're getting all these other new symbiote stories. You know, with actually and stuff.
Yeah, and you know, that's not even touching on you know, kind of one-offs like Venom 2099.
Right.
Or and far less, that's not really all that interesting. But and the anti-venom.
Ooh, yeah.
Forgot about anti-venom, which is we don't know who the host is, but making a comeback in just announced today, Savage Avengers by friend of the show David Pepose, making his Marvel debut.
Totally excited. We got to try to get him back on for so
Listen, he's working with Carlos Magno, who most recently illustrated the Kang miniseries, and he did about half the story for Chip Zdarsky's Invaders a couple years ago. He's legend in the making. The level of detail in this man's work is just mind-boggling. Yeah, I would absolutely be just fine with trying to get both those dudes back on the show. So, David, if you're listening right now, you should hit us up.
you know what we need to do now with that? Get like those like little hypnotic swirls on the screen.
Yeah.
Start. So David Pepose. David Pepose. Look in the screen, David.
But you know, I just think it's always interesting how it just completely enmeshed to the Spidey mythos that the symbiotes have become, right? From that humble beginning in Secret Wars #8, where Spidey got a new costume.
Yep.
And nobody could have possibly predicted what all was going to come from that one comic. And that's really cool. I mean, I just love the organic nature of stuff like that. Like, that's comic storytelling at its most accidental finest.
Yeah. And it's cool to even, you know, go back and, you know, you see where these characters grew from. Almost I don't say a lot of the times, but some of the time you felt like the series and the books and the stories were kind of thrown together.
Yeah.
But now it's like they rediscovered this huge sandbox. You know, you had this huge box of toys in the corner that you're really not jiving with, but you really don't want to go down to the Goodwill, you know, so we're going to keep them, you know. And now, wait a second, you know, and they did the Venom movie, you know, and now we have Let There Be Carnage, and then we had the Patrick Mulligan Easter egg in there when his eyes turn blue and stuff like that. You know, so I think, you know, that's really dope. Are we going to see, you know, could we see a Toxin? I don't know. We have a Patrick Mulligan.
Well, I suspect at some point we can definitely count on a third Venom movie from Sony. Like, that's just not even a question.
Especially with the end scene of No Way Home. You know?
That credits scene in No Way Home pissed me off. It really did. Because freaking that's kind of like Marvel is just telling Sony, nope, stay in your lane.
Yep. Yeah. No, I loved it. And I loved even fact, you know, you got the little space goo that, you know, stayed on the bar and stuff like that.
That's the thing. Like, that almost sets up the possibility that Marvel might just tell Sony, screw you and your janky Venom adjacent continuity. We're just going to make our own Carnage and be a lot more faithful to the comic, or our own Venom. And, you know.
And now, I mean, you already were ballsy enough to leave a piece of symbiote behind. You already have the multiverse open. So do you bring in a Spider-Gwen? You know, you already have that. Do you bring in a Miles? You know, and
Miles has already been obliquely referenced twice.
Right. You know,
in both Homecoming and No Way Home. So, and I mean, look, he's out since Sony put out Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, people know Miles.
Sure.
Like,
and they should.
It's just a matter of time before they bring Miles into the MCU.
Right. And as they should. I mean, he is a totally badass character. He's long overdue for proper respect. But
Word.
You know, yeah, and I think, like I said, we got excuse me. Oh, excuse me, again. You know, we got the Patrick Mulligan, you know, in Let There Be Carnage. So we have plenty of steps that we can bring other symbiotes in, even if you just mention it. You know, who's to say, you know, in the next, you know, Spider-Man movie or the next Venom movie, who's to say we don't see, you know, Grendel flying around, the big symbiote, you know, dragon, and then, you know, you kind of see him fly off, or, you know what I'm saying? Just shit like that. Or maybe you hint, you know, dare you bring Nolan or something, like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh man, we can't even go null. That's way too much. That's way too big.
It's way too soon.
That's man, that's just too big. I don't think the big screen could handle the big guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's too much. He's too
much.
I
mean, it can't do any worse than what they did with Galactus, but I mean,
that wasn't Marvel. That was Fox. I very strongly suspect that Marvel will fix that at some point.
God, that's so soul crushing right there, man.
Indeed, it is. Well, Mike, we've about run out of time this week, and as you know, I know this was kind of a weirdly balanced episode, like very serious stuff, and then space goo. But
we should continue Space Goo for next show and then go into Spidey.
I don't know how much more I have to say unless we go into a plot-by-plot recount of Maximum Carnage. And I don't think the internet could handle that. But
we could do a live read. We could do a live read, you know?
That story kills me. Because it's not a great story by any means, and it's a product of its time. But yet, it hinges on the fact that Carnage and his cohorts are literally killing hundreds of people throughout New York. And like the best backup Spidey can get is Black Cat and Venom, and I think Night Thrasher shows up at one point. No, not Night Thrasher. Who's the Spawn ripoff? Morbius and Iron Fist, and like the weirdest, most characters of assortment of all sorts. And yes, Cap eventually shows up, but my God, hundreds of people are being slaughtered in New York. And where are the Avengers? Where are the Fantastic Four? Hell, where's X-Force?
Right.
And like, look, you're gonna try to tell me that X-Force 93 couldn't take out Carnage like it weren't no thing? Please, Cable just body slide up there and shoot him right upside his head.
It's like those Pawn Stars memes, right? Where like, best I could do is this. Yeah. Oh, I need help fighting this maniacal demon, space demon. Best I could do is Black Cat. There you go.
And look, all respect to Black Cat, but she's not useful against Carnage.
Give me Ben Grimm. Give me something. Give me, you know.
Yes, the thing with his rock hide versus Carnage, or the Hulk, who was very smart then.
Yeah. Or you know what you need to do. I mean, it wouldn't be any fun, but you sit here, you call in Rogue, and it just let her just, you know, thrash him up.
Yeah, something. Literally anything other than call in the D-League. And Cap, who eventually showed up. Sorry, Cloak and Dagger stands, but you know.
Hey.
I know, and they're in that new Savage Avengers book. And everybody proposed, so we're gonna have to respect. But
don't think I didn't see that blaspheme that you kids were talking in the rec room about Cloak and Dagger.
That wasn't me.
Oh, but you were in there talking, and I think you did.
I don't even know. I don't even know I don't even know what you're talking about because I can't even say I have love or hate for Cloak and Dagger. I literally just don't care.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That's a lot of people. I have yet to find someone.
I
they're
mean,
out
they
there.
have their fans, but
We're few and far between.
I just, yeah, like there's no vocal contingency of fans out there that are like, yeah, Cloak and Dagger, woo!
Hey, they are the best duo in the quarter bin at the conventions.
Damn
So I
straight.
won't hear that trash.
All right. All right. Well, Mike, until next week, and we're sorry we were a day late. Life just happens sometimes to your faithful comic watchers. But we of course want to thank our sponsors, Frankie's Comics and Carson's Corner and Lemon Juice McGee, for helping sponsor our wacky shenanigans, both here and on the site. Next week, who knows? Maybe we'll do more Spidey. Maybe we will have a guest. Who knows? We'll figure it out. And but until next time, folks, please read banned books and don't let the powers that be, whoever they might be, take crucial and critical learning away from you. And if they do, you have an obligation to yourself to educate yourself and stand up for what's right. And
stop asking
banning books is never right.
Nope. Never.
So, until next time, support your local comic store, read something cool, and above all else, be good to one another. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.